Yes, thank you, Mr Speaker. The Christ's College Canterbury Amendment Bill, which was brought to the House by MP Nicky Wagner, has had a thorough scrutiny in the government administration. And I do commend my colleagues in the Government Administration Select Committee because we did give this bill the scrutiny that it needed, and I'll tell the Speaker why I felt it needed a bit of scrutiny. It's because a number of years ago, over a period of years, families throughout the Canterbury, South Canterbury, North Canterbury and indeed the length and breadth of New Zealand have made bequests to Christ's College. And those bequests have been traversing matters such as scholarships for boys for tutelage, for sons and grandsons of soldiers, for the purposes of a sporting activity such as fives. There are a number of trusts which have been set up and kind donations made into those trusts. And the purposes of those over the years have either, the funds are no longer needed, the activity is no longer appropriate, the sport is no longer played. And so the proprietors of Christ's College found themselves in the position of holding on to sums of money to which they had no good purpose. Now that, as they told us in Select Committee, really served no use. There is no useful funds accumulating in various accounts to which there is no purpose. And so the Select Committee had a look at the Christ College Canterbury Amendment Bill. There is precedent for this bill, or a number of precedents for the circumstances surrounding this bill. The Methodist Church of New Zealand was another, and their trusts bill, which was recently passed in this House, well, that dealt with the same problem of funds which were given by bequest for a purpose, and that purpose no longer existed, as also did the Anglican Church Trusts Act in 1981, and also the Presbyterian Church Property Amendment Act of 1996, the Roman Catholic Bishops Empowering Act of 1997. And so you can see, Mr Speaker, that this is not an uncommon problem and one which we were happy to deal with. And I must credit Nicky Wagner MP for bringing this bill to the House and providing such a good link, and I think it's really important for a good local MP to do this, is to provide a good link between the promoters of this bill and linking through to the Select Committee and indeed this Parliament. And so I think Nicky Wagner has done a particularly good job in this instance in keeping the connections going between the promoters and Parliament. So this bill, Mr Speaker, means the Christ College Canterbury Act of 1910, and so you can see, without even my comments prefacing this part of my speech, that this bill is well and truly out of date. And so what it seeks to do, and I think we have achieved that through the Select Committee, is remove difficulties in administering trusts and property which have been invested in the college. Now, the Select Committee needed and wished to tighten up on a couple of the aspects of the bill as it was presented to us by the promoters. And so we did recommend replacing the wording in the original bill as presented to the House with words from the Charitable Trusts Act, and it was felt that aligning the words of the Charitable Trusts Act with those in this bill provided certainty as to what the intention was that is set out in this bill. And so I think the promoters accepted the suggestion of the committee to do that, and we're very happy to have those words put in. And the other concern that was raised by members of the committee were that the wording in the bill was perhaps a little bit loose, and some of these sums of money that were sitting in redundant trusts were intended for the purposes for the benefit of the college, and yet when you go back to each individual trust, some of those monies were given for quite specific purposes. And so it was the committee's wish, and with the agreement of the promoters, that the purpose is as close as reasonably possible to that which for which the property was given to or vested in the college. And so if the bequest was perhaps to advance sporting interests, then it was the intention and wish of the committee that the wording in the bill reflected that, so that in time to come when the proprietors of Christ's College decided to use a bequest fund, it was as close as possible to that which was intended in the first place. And I was particularly happy as a committee member to see us tightening up on the wording of that bill. I mean, we didn't really want to see a bequest which was made many years ago by the family of a fallen soldier to go to something quite unrelated to that, because maybe the family, wouldn't have liked that, because in giving a bequest particularly associated with the family of a soldier or soldiers, because a number of boys, of course, of Christ's College did fight for our country, I do feel we did need to keep the purpose as close as possible. And so, Mr Speaker, the Christ's College Canterbury Amendment Bill, as it is returned to the House for its second reading, I think keeps the spirit of the bill that was introduced to the House by the promoters of the bill, and indeed of Nicky Wagner, who has brought it before us. I think also we have managed through the Select Committee process to keep the spirit of those bequests as close to the original intention of those people that made those bequests. And so, Mr Speaker, with those words, I commend this bill to the House.
Grant Roberts.